Hi, I'm Diane McGarry with Drake Arts. Thank you for joining me today for our November 2024 Arts Saturday performance featuring the traveling performer and composer Ben Cosgrove. Ben is a traveling composer and performer whose music explores themes of landscape, place, and environment. He has performed in every state in the United States except for Delaware, so be sure to figure out a way to invite him there. He's collaborated with groups ranging from rock bands to research scientists, contributed music to several radio and film projects, including the recent Ken Burns documentary, The American Buffalo, and he's held residencies and fellowships with institutions like NASA, the National Park Service, the National Forest Service, Harvard University, Middlebury College, the Schmidt Ocean Institute, and Sitka Center for Arts and Ecology. Ben's music has been called beautiful and fascinating, deeply impressive, and immediately evocative and fully arresting, brimming with technical mastery and emotional capital. His newest album, Bearing, a collection of improvisation-based music that reflects upon the relationship between movement and place, was released in October of last year. So here is Ben with some of his wonderful compositions. I hope you enjoy them as much as I do.
Thanks very much. My name is Ben Cosgrove, and I write instrumental piano music about landscape. So all of these songs are inspired in some way by geography or place, or I'm sort of a geography nerd trapped in the body of a piano player, and this is how I've learned to make sense of my life. That song is called Salt. It's the title track to an album called Salt that we can talk more about later. I'm going to play a couple songs now from an album I made a couple of years ago called, the album's called The Trouble with Wilderness. And I wrote this album because I realized I was kind of going from town to town and playing songs about landscape every night. And very much by accident, I found that I've written a lot of music about the same kind of place. Like I had all this music about, like oceans, and all this music about national parks, and all this music about wilderness areas, and not a lot of songs at all about places that have people in them. So I worried that, by doing that, I might be reinforcing the idea about, what nature is and where we might find it. That is not at all consistent with the one I believe in, which, of course, the tree in your backyard is every bit as wild and interesting and worthy of wonder as one in the middle of a national park. So that album is 12 songs that are each about a different moment of, overlap between the built and natural environment, where it's sort of hard to tell what is nature and what is not. This is the first song in the record. It's called The Machine in the Garden. And if you want an image to hold in your head while I'm playing it, you can imagine maybe plants growing up through the cracks in the sidewalk. This is another song from the same album. I figured if I was going to write a whole record about that concept, I should have at least one song in the album that is about gardens, because gardens to me have always represented, these sort of funny in-between situations where, human beings try to apply reason and order and right angles and straight lines to all these plants that really sort of want to like explode everywhere and do what they'll do. So that tension between, order and chaos has always been very interesting to me. That's what this song is about. The title of this song is This Rush of Beauty and This Sense of Order, which is a line I stole from E.B. White. He and his wife Catherine was a very avid gardener, and she would often be, several states away. She'd be in Maine, he'd be in New York, or vice versa. And they would write these letters back and forth that are all kind of collected and documented. And at the end of one of his letters to her, he wrote through this very cute poem about gardens and gardening, the last two lines of which are, not sun, not soil alone shall bring to border this rush of beauty and this sense of order. And I hope you like it. There's secretly a bunch of people in this room. I'm going to play a song now so I have a new album that came out almost a year ago now. Depending on when this airs, it's more than a year ago. But my latest album, as of right now, is called Bearings. Came out last fall. And I wrote bearings in an unusual way because my normal compositional process. I think we maybe talked about this during the interview a couple of months ago, but my normal compositional process is to sort of write a song about a place and then sort of obsessively overthink it for months and years before I actually record it, by which time I hate it. So I was trying to think of ways to get around that. And I was also thinking a bit about how I learn and engage with landscapes in real life, which is always by, like moving through them in some way, whether you're on foot or on a car or on a bike. I feel like you don't really know the shape of, the land you're on until you've kind of seen the hill from 7 different angles or whatever it might be. So I thought a good way to solve both of these problems at once would be to, instead of doing my normal thing, I just booked a bunch of studio time and then arranged to show up at the studio each time with no music pre-written at all, just a notebook full of, prose and text about the ideas and the landscapes and the places and the concepts that I knew I wanted to write music about. And then I would have to find the song by moving around the piano in real time in much the same way that you learn a landscape by moving over that. I was very satisfied with the brilliance of this idea, and then sort of arrived in the studio and immediately felt like an idiot who was wasting everybody's time and money because it's very hard to do that. But then it all kind of turned around on, this was the second song we tried to record, me and the engineer, and it really fell off my fingers all at once, and it sort of gave me encouragement that actually this project might have legs after all. This song is called Aerial, and I wrote it because it was pointed out to me that I have all this music about land and all this music about water and not a lot of music at all about the sky, which is, when you think about it, about 50% of the world as you experience it. So small step towards correcting that having overlooked. I have a nephew who's turning 1 next week, and they play him that song to put him to sleep. So this is like the first functional thing I've ever made. I've never been useful before. I'm gonna play an older song now. This is called Montreal Song. It's one of the first songs I wrote as a full. It's about 10 years old. This song. It's also the only song I have available as sheet music because during the COVID lockdown, I had this brilliant idea. I would transcribe a bunch of these songs and make them available, and I'd sell a whole book of them and be this brilliant money making scheme. And then it took so long to transcribe this song that I decided that was going to be it. So this is the one option if you want to do this at home. Thank you. That's another little song. This is called When You Are a Road. Thank you. I'm drinking coffee because this is about 9 hours before I normally do this. So. I'm going to talk now about the Nashua River, which I've told this story many times, but it begins in north central Massachusetts, just west of the towns of Fitchburg and Leominster, goes through them. They're old mill towns. Then it sort of dips south, picks up a couple tributaries, and shoots north, crosses into New Hampshire, and meets the Merrimack River in the city of Nashua, and then kind of rolls out to the ocean, actually right over there. In the process of doing this, this water sort of outlines much of the region in which I grew up. I mostly grew up like 5 miles from where we are right now, actually. So I've always felt a very strong connection to the Nashua. That's what the song is about. It's also got an amazing story of recovery, where as recently as the 60s, the Nashua was, bright orange and sometimes pink. It's one of the most polluted waterways anywhere in the country, and today you can swim in it, you can kayak in it. It's protected by I can't remember the name of the act, but all this is almost entirely due to the work of one woman named Marion Stoddart, who formed one of the first watershed associations in the country. Spent decades mailing like mason jars of horrible water to Congress people. Really, really inspiring person. So Google her in another tab while you're listening to this. The song is called National. Thank you. I love this band. This is another song from the Wilderness album. This is called Anorak. And it's, I guess, about the disorienting effects of a heavy rainstorm in a city. I'm gonna do just a couple more songs, but thank you again very much for having me. I know the invisible people behind me. I'm trying to decide if I have time for. Oh yeah. So the first song I played was called Salt. Like I mentioned, that is the title track to an album I made that is also called Salt. That is 10 songs that are each about different places where you can't necessarily depend on the ground being underneath you when you want it to be. So it's like the way the album is shaped, it starts off with songs about places like, earthquakes, avalanches, that sort of thing, and then moves over the course of the record to be songs about places like salt marshes, which that first song was about, which, I was underwater for half the day and above water for the other half of the day, and yet is a salt marsh the whole time, which I feel like is a nice thing to aspire to. And the idea, abstractly about the album is that it's sort of, by being shaped in that way, it's supposed to be sort of broadly about learning to find ballast and stability, even in a world that might be, roiling underneath you all the time. And finding, constancy in flux. It's also a breakup album that I wrote about estuaries, so this is how I process things. This song is from the first half of the album, so it's one of the angsty ones, but it is the most fun to play, so I hope you like it. It's called Break. Thank you very, very much. This will be my last song. It's a shorter one. It's actually, I realize now that I haven't decided which of two songs this is going to be, so I'm going to commit to one now, and it's one called Landfall. So I do a lot of, if we maybe talk about this during the interview too, I do a lot of artist residencies, because it turns out that an ancillary benefit of writing music about landscapes that people keep writing you and asking you to come different places and do that, which has been a nice thing that I hadn't anticipated. So I've gotten to work with a lot of national parks. I worked with a National Scenic Trail for a year and a half. I just finished a project with a National Wildlife Refuge out in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And this song is one I wrote during what perhaps the weirdest of these I've ever done, which was several years ago. I was invited to be the artist at sea on a research ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which was weird for me because I write piano music about land, and there was no piano and also no land. But it's sort of, it really, what I wound up doing for a whole bunch of reasons that I'll spare you the details. But rather than write about the science being done on board, I wound up having to write instead about kind of just the experience of that, like I would write about any other landscape. And I don't know how many of you have ever been out at sea, kind of out of sight land for days at a time, but it's unbelievably weird. The only thing I could think to compare it to is, actually I have another song that I didn't play today, called Abilene, which I wrote the first time I ever drove across western Kansas, and it's all about the sort of simultaneous experiences of disorientation and exhilaration that you feel, and just like not being able to tell kind of like where you are in relation to anything else, or how fast you're going, or like, you know, driving a space shuttle through wheat. And this experience, being out at sea, felt like that times a million. You know, you like stand on the deck of the ship and look out. Everything looks like a Rothko painting. It's a big field of this color, big field of this color, and a sort of hazy line in the middle for days. And so it can seem, if you just could glance at it, like very still, and then if you consider it for more than a second, you realize, like, actually, no, nothing I'm looking at is still at all. Everything is moving. You know, if the wind is blowing, the waves are going, the current's moving, that thing's moving, you're moving. And it just struck me that the idea that you can sort of stand in the middle of this riot of motion and chaos and feel even vaguely upright and oriented and like you know which way is what, it's a pretty remarkable feature of being a human being that I'd never thought to appreciate before. So I wrote a lot of music about that. And this song, which again is shorter than the story I'm telling you about it, is called Landfall. And it's about the moment the ship gets back into port, and that mode of orientation I was just describing kind of has to snap back into the one you've had for your whole life on land, where you can kind of lean against the ground and reasonably expect it to behave in a certain way. I think that's all the information you need for this one. Thank you all again very much for having me, and thanks for watching.
This has been incredible, Ben. Thank you for sharing such a neat and special way to explore and experience our world and ourselves. And thank you to our many sponsors who I'll show here shortly for making this and all of our programs possible, especially the Dracut Cultural Council, who provides funding through the Massachusetts Cultural Council. If you'd like to be a sponsor or a donor, please get in touch with us at dracutarts.com/donate or dracutarts@gmail.com. You can contact us for more information about our Art Saturdays and other programs. This and all of our programs are archived on the Dracut Arts YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@dracutarts. Thank you so much for being here today.